Welcome to Alouettes Flightdeck, podcast dedicated to Montreal Alouettes football. I am Tim Capper. You can find me on Twitter at Repact. That's REPPACT.
And I'm Cliffy D. You can also find me on Twitter, but at Cliffy D. And this episode of the Alouettes Flightdeck is presented by our good friends over at SportBuff, where you can save 10% off your entire order by using the promo code FlightDeck-10. Head on over to www.sportbuffshop.com and make sure you get all your holiday sports shopping done this year.
And you can find us on the internet, many places. First place you want to go to is over at alouettesflightdeck.ca, where you can check out our entire history, our entire archive of all the great guests that we've spoken to over the years, and especially this year in our 7th season. Also on Twitter at AlouettesFLDeck. Instagram, do a search for us at Alouettes Flight Deck. Facebook, at Alouettes Flight Deck Pod. Our merchandise can be found over at teespring.com/stores/Al's Flight Deck. And finally, thanks to you, you can find us on YouTube now, youtube.com/Alouettes Flight Deck. And yes, this is the season finale for the Flight Deck for Season 7. You will be getting a show coming up, a mini show very shortly on, actually we're going to do it on YouTube. Hey, quelle surprise, right, Cliff? Where we are going to be giving away that Delta jacket that we have so promised for so long, but because of thanks to you, the fans, we were able to go ahead and give that away.
Absolutely. I'm very excited to basically end the year on a high as well. I mean, this is technically the final broadcast of the Alouettes Flight Deck for 2022, but we still have to give away that beautiful satin jacket. And we figured, because it was YouTube, because it was everybody that was helping us try to grow ourselves on YouTube, we appreciate each and every one of your support. I couldn't think of a better way to do it than with a nice little live stream where we'll be doing it all, including giving away that beautiful satin retro jacket.
Yep, that's right. It's hard to believe, Cliff, again, as you just mentioned, that this is the season finale of the broadcast season for 2022 for our 7th season, 36 shows, 16 guests. We have our 16th coming up this show. And as we have done with over the past couple of years, we are going to be speaking with Alouettes President Mario Cecchini. Get ready for that interview, because he actually, other than what he had mentioned in the original press conference, the year-end press conference by the Alouettes, Cliff, he actually did have a few tidbits for us that we are glad to be able to bring to you, the fans.
100%. As always, it's such a pleasure and a privilege, really, when you think about it, to be able to sit and talk with the president of the Montreal Alouettes, get his insight on what's been going on, what took place in 2022. I mean, there's so much to talk about, and it was such a treat to be able to do so, and I'm really excited for you guys and gals to be able to listen to this.
It's sort of our year in review show, along with the interview with Mario. We want to at least talk about also what happened this past week. The Alouettes, second time since COVID, the Alouettes had their locker room sale. It actually seemed to be very well attended, considering the time that we got there and what the lineup was at that time. Note to self and to anybody there out that who wants to go in the future to these things: if you want to get a jersey from one of the fan favorites, one of the stars of the team, make sure you get there early, because as we saw this year, Cliff, those jerseys went quick.
Oh yeah, I mean, pretty much anything, whether it's jerseys, home and away, helmets, even nameplates, if you can believe that, folks. I mean, you know who the superstars of this team are. And if you wanted to get any of their stuff, you pretty much had to be first in line. And I don't know if it was like those crazy Black Friday sales. I mean, the Alouettes were only letting people in like 8 at a time.
Yeah, I know. That was weird in itself.
But I mean, if you were one of those first 8 to get in, you basically had the pick of the litter, so to speak. I mean, if you wanted that Trevor Harris or that Eugene Lewis jersey, it was yours right there. It was there for the taking. And by the time you and I got down there, I mean,
and we're in the third or fourth group only. That's the thing. And it was the lockers were basically bare.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, folks. There was a lot of stuff. I mean, there was a lot of game worn stuff, a lot of equipment, a lot of stuff that any Alouettes fan would be thrilled to get their hands on. But I mean, if you were looking for specific players, I mean, and it's first come first serve. And let's face it, there's only one road jersey, there's one home jersey, and once they're gone, they're gone. So like I said, if you wanted, say, Gino's jersey, I mean, you pretty much had to be first in line, and that was it. I mean, even when we got there, like I said, we were looking for Tyson Philpott, for example, and he was gone too.
Yeah,
like he was snapped up. I saw someone walking around with his jersey. I'm like, oh, okay, there that goes. Nameplates too. I mean, this is the other thing. Like, pretty much anything that had like someone's name and number on it. Like, if you had a specific player in mind, you have to get there early. There's just no two ways about it. I mean,
yeah.
Well, by the time we got there, there was a lot of jerseys and that. There was still a lot of stuff. I mean, stuff was on sale too. Like a lot of T-shirts and other apparel was from 25 to 50% off even. But again, it's if you were looking for specific game worn stuff from a certain player, you had to get there early. That's all there was to it. I mean, there's lots of great players still left available, but I mean, if you were looking for that one specific player, as I said, like one of the superstars, you pretty much had to be first in line. Like it really was first come, first serve. There's just no two ways about it.
Yep, and there were again. It's I guess we may have to think differently next year, and I'm hoping that they see that in itself, Cliff, makes me wonder what's going to be necessary to do in order to get one of the current styles of helmets, because those weren't available this year. They had a lot of the other bird's eye view helmets, I'll call them. With the logo sort of splayed on top. Exactly. But they were just the shells. They weren't. They didn't have face masks. But we found out why, and it was a good reason why. It's because they used the red face masks on a lot of the 2022 helmets, so it made a ton of sense. But I'm still hoping to get my hands on one of those. Did speak with Corey, by the way, who is the general manager of the boutique. Stay tuned for an announcement for their winter sale or whatever. I can't remember. He gave me a specific name, but it was stay tuned for a sale on the boutique, which will include a lot of stuff that was not at the locker room sale. So stay tuned for that. So yeah, definitely. If for whatever reason you couldn't attend the locker room sale and you were looking to get save some money on apparel, like actual Alouettes apparel that you would normally buy on the website, take a look at the website next. Keep your eyes on the website and keep your eye on our socials too, because we'll mention it as well that when this winter sale happens, we haven't been given any specific date yet, but it's going to happen. And when it does, we'll let each and every one of you know about it. Yeah. And here's now you and I talked about this. I'm going to ask you again, but I also want to ask the fans what they would actually do in this situation. So, Cliff, as you know, sometimes before players are actually superstars with the team, when they come into training camp, they usually are assigned a number. And by the time that they become a superstar, it's not necessarily the same number that they're going to have throughout their career, a la Gino Lewis, a la Ben Cahoon. If you know Alouettes history, you know that each of those two superstars had different numbers when they were rookies. And I came across... And rose to prominence wearing another one. So exactly. So I had the option, which you and I both saw on the rack, of potentially purchasing the original preseason jersey of Davis Alexander, because he was 6 at the time. And you and I went back and forth about, should we take, because he has been said that it's very possible he will be the future quarterback of the team. And did we want to take a risk, quote unquote, risk on his jersey, knowing that? What was your answer to me when I asked you, do you think we should buy this jersey based on those variables? It's a gamble. It's definitely a gamble. I mean, I'm sure whoever it was that bought Ben Cahoon's number 32 jersey definitely was taking a risk, because we did, at that time, you didn't know if Ben Cahoon was going to be a superstar, just yet another player, on the roster. Same thing with Gino Lewis. Like he started on the practice roster and, had to wait for his opportunity to come up before he became a known name. And that one preseason game, he was number 73. Yep. But
again, you like it's kind of weird. It's one of those deep dive kind of moments. Like when you see someone wearing, if you were to see someone wearing a Ben Cahoon jersey with number 32, your first initial reaction is like, the hell? Oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
But that's if you know, like if you've been following this team like we have for decades now, then you know this history. But I'm sure a lot of people would look at a Gino Lewis 73 jersey and be like, I think you made a mistake there, buddy, or maybe thinking about somebody else with the name Lewis on the team.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like, so it's kind of one of those weird things. Like right now, number 6 is Darius Pickett. Again, we don't know what's going to happen. See, I believe he's a free agent this year. I mean, if for whatever reason he doesn't come back to the Alouettes, number 6 would be available. Would Davis want to go back to wearing his number 6? Because he wore that in college, as you heard on our interview with him. I don't know. Maybe that might be something to consider. Yeah. It's a calculated risk. Let's leave it at that.
It's fair. Yeah, that's fair. Mm-hmm.
Because as it stands right now, like if you were to, if you were a Davis Alexander fan and you wanted to buy his jersey, typically you'd be buying the number 17 because that's what he was wearing in 2022. But players change jerseys all the time. I'll give you a great example. Greg Reed, when he was first started with his first year with the Alouettes, he was number 33, and then he switched to 26. Biding his time because obviously he wanted his number 5 that he wore when he was in Florida State with Florida State.
Right.
Finally has it now. So now, but there are people who have purchased Greg Reed jerseys with number 26 on them.
I have his nameplate. I have his 33 nameplate.
There you go. And I mean, and I'm sure somebody somewhere may have purchased that number 33 jersey. But at the same time, it's kind of weird because if you're wearing it, it's a Greg Reed jersey, and those who know it's a Greg Reed jersey. But like casual fans would be like, okay, well, who's 33 Reed, for example, or 20 at this point 26 Reed. I mean, it's one of those tough things. Like, I mean, unfortunately, in a perfect world, you get assigned a number and it's yours till the end of time, basically. Like, and you make that number yours and you make it famous, but it doesn't always work out that way. So it's, as I've said, it's a calculated risk. I mean, if for example, Davis Alexander takes the number 6, if Darius Pickett doesn't come back, which I sincerely hope he does come back because he's a hell of a player. If he doesn't come back and then Davis Alexander does take the number 6 because all of a sudden it's available and he does become that superstar that we feel he could be in the right environment, then you're going to kind of look back and like, dang, maybe I should have got that jersey. But, it's a catch-22 really when you think about it. It's, which way do you go? Do you gamble on, and let's not forget, folks, these jerseys are not cheap either. I mean, they're not ridiculously expensive, but they're not cheap either. So I mean, it's a gamble. It's really truly a gamble. There's no other way to describe it. You're buying a lottery ticket and hoping it pays off.
Yeah, no, it's true. So our question to you is, what would you do if you had the option to purchase a potential team star, or somebody
a budding superstar.
Yeah, thank you. That's the best way of putting it. What would you do? So let us know on socials. Let us know on email. Yeah, well, we want to know. We want to know specifically what you guys think. You can. Yeah.
And hey, if it comes to pass that no one did buy that jersey, then guess what, folks? Now you've got something to think about. Like if you want to be the one that hops on that next potential superstar and be able to say, I knew this guy when. Mm-hmm. What better way to do that than with the jersey from his first preseason game where, well, actually, he played 2 preseason games and was outstanding in them, hence why he made the team, hence why he was a member of the Alouettes and will continue to be a member of the Alouettes going forward. So,
yeah, exactly. I agree.
Say what, folks? I mean, this could be the opportunity. If it comes back on sale again, or you find some way to acquire it via the website or what have you, then, may the odds be ever in your favor.
So let us know by social. Let us know by email. Email me at tim.capper@alouettesflightdeck.ca. Email Cliff at his new email at cliffyd.pine@alouettesflightdeck.ca. Let us know what you would do in this circumstance. We're curious to know. Also, the locker room allowed us to talk to, obviously, a couple of the coaches, a couple of former players, a couple of current players. Spoke with Gino Lewis, spoke with Anthony Calvillo. We spoke with William Stanback. I don't know which I enjoyed the most.
Can we say all of the above?
Yeah, I'll say all of the above. And I think...
fun fact, we've had all 3 of them on the Alouettes Flight Deck.
That's true. the one I think I love the most, and I've always told you this, and I think people who know me when I do an interview, is if I can learn one new thing in an interview, I'm happy. If I know it, if you learn it, if the fans, the listeners learn it. In this case, I think it would be the conversation with AC. Because we were talking about contracts and stuff like that, and the new head coaches and stuff. And I think it just came out of nowhere. He was talking about one of his experiences going through signing a contract during one of his free agent years. And it blew my mind. Blew my mind.
Yeah. I mean, it's always interesting to get perspective when it comes to free agency and all the stuff that goes on with it from someone who's been through it. Like someone it may have been several years ago, but he still went through it. Like it's hard to fathom that the Alouettes would have ever let Anthony Calvillo get to free agency, but it came very close, folks. And we came to learn this as well, is that he had actually signed a contract, an extension minutes before becoming a free agent, if you could believe that. I mean, you talk about going down to the wire, and this was something that was, as far as I know, never revealed, or not made public, the fact that, AC was this close to becoming an actual honest to goodness free agent.
Yeah.
I mean, you just assume that, okay, well, he's such an integral part of the Alouettes, especially in the early 2000s, all the way through to the Grey Cup years. I mean, like the idea that you would let AC get to that point where he might go somewhere else is, you just can't even wrap your head around it.
No.
But sure enough, from AC's lips himself, like he had mentioned that he'd spoke about this, and I'm like, wow, this is fascinating. And just, you wonder what the thought process was, and just, we sat, we talked with him for a good while. It was amazing. And the fact that we have that opportunity, Tim, to be able to sit and, chit chat with a legend like Anthony Calvillo.
Yeah, agreed.
Is amazing. And just getting his perspective as well as his first year back with the Alouettes as a position coach again. And he's gone through so much too. I mean, over the past couple of years, and for him to be in this position is tremendous. And I sincerely hope, as again, we tried to see if we can get some insight as to this potential coaching change, whether there actually will be a new head coach, or just maybe does Danny Mack step behind the sidelines again. We'll see. And even AC is just like, well, I guess, whatever is going to happen is going to happen. Like, he seems confident that he'll be back with the Alouettes in 2023, and I sincerely hope so. Yeah. I sincerely hope AC is back and still doing his thing. So I guess we'll let the chips fall where they may, and it all depends on the head coach that gets brought in, whether or not he still wants AC on the staff. I sincerely hope so. So, like I said, fingers crossed that AC is still a member of the Alouettes in some way, shape, or form in 2023. That's all we can hope for. It was just an absolute blast to talk with him.
Oh yeah, and we also found out a little bit more. We found out about his book, how that came to be. He explained it, and I didn't know this. This is one of those things where, it takes time and time for a book to be thought of at first, and then the idea brought to a publisher, and then giving the go ahead, and yada yada yada. That wasn't the case. This thing almost was a done deal from the get go, which is
before one word was written, it was a go.
Yeah, I know, and. He even said himself, the best way right now for it to get a lot of traction at it is currently, because he's been asked a lot of questions about when is it going to be available in English. We completely understood why the book was released in French first in Quebec. We completely understand why it was done that way. A, it's the market. B, it's the market. C, A, and B. But he did say, for those of you across Canada and in the U.S., there will be an English version coming in the near future. Mm-hmm. So stay tuned for that, because I'm really looking forward to reading this book and seeing what he has to say.
Oh, without question. I mean, and we were blessed to have him on a couple of years ago, and definitely would love to have him back on again to share not only this story of his impending free agency of a whole 10 minutes or whatever it was, but just to have him back on to kind of rehash some of this stuff. And I'm sure he's got so many more great stories to tell. And anytime he wants to come back on the podcast, he's more than welcome to do so.
Oh, exactly. Speaking with Gino, obviously, as everybody knows, he is a free agent. A lot of variables, obviously, this year. If you saw his postseason press conference, you know what he's looking for. Cliff and I put out on social what I think he's worth a year. This is going to be, and I've already said to you multiple times, Cliff, that this is going to be a very stressful offseason, I think. I think as soon as one or two people get signed before free agency, the dominoes will start to line up. Everything will fall into place.
And I think what it is too is, and I know they want to get this settled before Christmas, but whoever is going to be the head coach of the Alouettes in 2023 is going to be a major decision maker for a lot of these pending free agents. And I really think that's really what it's going to come down to, is whoever the head coach that gets hired, are these free agents like Gino and Trevor Harris and others, are they going to want to play for this guy? Or is it going to be a matter of, okay, maybe I really just want to see what my market value is, and Danny should know what I'm worth, and is he willing to pay that right away? Then I'll sign. If not, well, let's see what the other 8 teams are offering me, and then go from there. So you're right, it has potential to be very stressful, until we get that announcement that, hey, so and so is staying put. Until then, all we can do is wait and speculate. And again, it all comes down to who gets hired as head coach for the Alouettes, especially if it's not Danny Machocha, who has said on numerous occasions that he will not be the head coach in 2023. I want to believe that, but there's so many variables here. As I said, there's a lot of things to take in consideration when it comes to that. And he did say there was a small chance that he could return to the sidelines, and I guess we'll see. I'm willing to keep an open mind to everything, especially after this year. What we've seen this year from this coaching staff and from this organization, I am willing to keep an open mind, but it's got to make sense. No matter what the decision is, it has to make sense, because this head coach hiring is going to make or break this team. Danny wants to put his own person in. He wants to put his own stamp on this team, and for the most part, he has. When it comes to general manager moves, now it comes down to who your head coach is going to be. If it's not you, if it's going to be someone else, you can't whiff on this one. I mean, you take a look at what the Ottawa Red Blacks did in hiring Bob Dice, which I think was a great hire, and look who he's brought onto his staff already. I mean, Danny Machocha cannot misstep here at all when it comes to this hire. Whether it's him coming back or whether he brings in someone else, he cannot make a mistake with this hire. He has to hit a home run, not a triple, practically a grand slam at this point. Like, he cannot miss with this hire.
No, I agree. I also thought it was funny that I'm sure he knew in the back of his head, to kind of put the inception into William Stanback's head about the upcoming edition of the designated Canadian position, and saying, hey, it may be something that you may want to add into your contract as a bonus, because that easily could become a game changer next year. It's going to be interesting to see how that forms. We need to see more information on it, obviously, but it was interesting to see his reaction when we talked about the potential of, even if he doesn't become the designated Canadian this year, he could become one next year if the amount of players is increased by the CFL.
Mm-hmm. No, it's definitely something that players. It's an option that is now suddenly available to them, or potentially can be made available to them. Mm-hmm. And you saw, you could see, the gears turning. He was like, really? Okay. Just kind of thinking, all right. Again, he's already under contract for next season. But if the Alouettes want to keep him happy, knowing how productive he is and what he can do and what he has done for this organization, this is another potential dangling carrot to just, keep your superstars happy, if you will. So will it happen? It's, again, only time's going to tell. But it definitely gave him food for thought.
Yeah.
Maybe we cost the organization a few bucks, because now he's go back with his agent and say, hey, I want to get paid again. Thanks, jerk-offs over at the flight deck, for putting that idea in his head.
I think a couple of players, I wouldn't be surprised, Cliff, knowing that if they have the potential to be given that option of being, named a designated Canadian, I'm sure a few of these other contracts that are going to be signed in free agency, that no matter where they go, no matter where they play in the CFL, I'm sure that will be added into many, many contracts when it comes to a particular bonus that they could earn. So, Cliff, you want to talk about the news we found out this week with certain players and signing stuff?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, it's funny, we just talked about players signing, and we actually came to learn that Armando Sewell will be returning to the Alouettes. No, he is not the designated Canadian. We clarified that with him.
We did, yep.
And we're very excited to see Mondo back, because since he's been here in Montreal, I mean, he's just been a force and just does it, man. I mean, the guy is just, he's a veteran, but man, he plays with such passion, with such dedication, puts his heart, he wears his heart on his sleeve, and he just goes out there and does his job, and does an amazing job of it too. And he's basically like a coach, if you will, on the defensive line. Like, he's a little bit older than some of the guys on the line, but you know what? He brings the experience. He's got that veteran savvy. I mean, and he knows how to get the most out of players as well. I mean, it's like having a defensive line coach right there beside you when you're lining up on the D line with Mondo, and that's got to be a great feeling as well. Like, you talk to some of the guys like Mike Moore, Nick Usher, Brock Gowanlock, especially like these are young, hungry guys that have helped make an impact on this team. Jamal Davis too, I'm sure, has to be excited knowing that Mondo is going to be back, and help him become the best player possible as well. So definitely excited to see Mondo back. And also today was also announced that long snapper Pierre-Luc Caron is back with the Alouettes. Definitely excited. And funny thing with long snapper is, you don't always know who the long snapper is. And sometimes that's by design, because if the long snapper is doing his job properly, you don't notice him.
Right.
It's when he's not there that you notice, oh, that's a very important position. So very excited that Pierre-Luc is back. In addition to that, there's also been a few roster adds as well. And one or two guys that have been a part of the practice roster, which I think, if given the right opportunity, will become impact players. Most notably, Radim Brown and Yanis Chihat. Both were actually drafted this year by the Alouettes in the 2022 draft. They both went back to school. Both were able to contribute, and especially Yanis won a Vanier Cup for the Laval Rouge et Or. So he's bringing yet more championship experience to this team in its own way. So cannot be mad about that. Rashad Harding was added to the practice roster and didn't get a chance to see any action this year. But this is one of those diamond in the rough types that I think is going to make an impact. And I got a feeling, too, he's definitely excited about the prospect of coming to camp and competing to be a part of this linebacking core. As you know, the Alouettes linebacking core this year was nothing short of incredible. So if Harding can come in and make an impact right away, I mean, that's just makes a good thing even better.
Oh, yeah.
Plus, we got two receivers as well added to the roster, Demetrius Robertson and Jermaine Wynn, both young burgeoning talents that I think in the right scenario, in the right situation, can give some of these, again, you take a look at the wide receiving core this year, absolute murderer's row of talent when you think about it. And to the point where I have to wonder, like, are we going to be able to keep everybody? I mean, you think about it, like Jake Wienecke,
yep,
Reggie White Jr., Gino. I mean, these guys are free agents. And I know everybody's concentrating on Gino as far as making sure that he comes back as an Alouette. But, I mean, you're going to have to pay Gino. There's no question about that. You're going to have to pay a Trevor Harris at quarterback. And a lot of guys are going to want to get paid. And one can't help but wonder if some of these receivers are going to be on the outside looking in which case you better have a damn good backup plan.
Yeah.
And, it could very well be one of these youngsters that I just mentioned here. Like, they could come into camp and just play lights out football, and lo and behold, they make the roster. And next thing you know, you're buying their jersey at the locker room sale next year.
Exactly. And I think I've said this, I don't know if I said it on the pod or not, but I've said it openly, of the names that we currently have that are free agents, the big names here, Cliff, I think we're losing at least one wide receiver.
It's inevitable. I mean, that's the thing, because all these guys are going to want to get paid, and they're all known entities in this league, thanks to the Alouettes, thanks to them playing the way they have. They know what they're worth. They know they have an idea. They have a number in mind in their head of what they feel they deserve. And if Montreal can't meet it, maybe someone else will. And if that's the case, then yeah. Or if the opportunity to win a Grey Cup. I mean, yes, Montreal was very close to doing that, but there was a couple other teams too that were just on the cusp. And maybe, just maybe, if one of those guys was playing on the team, that could have made all the difference in the world. Yeah. Who knows? Yeah. That's kind of the beauty of this, is knowing what you're worth and not willing to settle. I mean, I think the idea of a hometown discount sounds nice. And for some players, yeah, they'd be willing to do that. But I think a lot of these guys, I think at this point too, now that the uncertainty that was there before when it came to the collective bargaining agreement and what these players could get, now that's kind of in the past right now. And that's why a lot of these guys were signing these 1-year deals, mostly to bet on themselves a little bit, but also to just to know that, okay, at least this year I'm covered, but I know things are changing.
Yeah.
And when they do, and if I have the opportunity to make more money, I'm going to take it, whether it's here in Montreal or elsewhere. That's what I'm going to do, which any athlete is going to do. They'd be crazy not to. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a business. This is their job. This is what they're getting paid to do. And you want to maximize yourself as much as possible. And as great it would be to keep all these guys intact, inevitably someone is going to be probably lowballed offered and maybe feel like, okay, I think I'm just going to have to move on because I want to get paid and I want to win a championship. And if I can't do one or the other here, then I'm just going to take my talents elsewhere.
It'll be interesting to see. And so this will be more for during the off season and our first couple of shows for 2023. Lastly, before we get to our great interview with Alouettes President Mario Cecchini, we found out that not one, but 2 players, well-known players on the Alouettes, actually had tryouts with teams in the NFL. KJG, Keon Julian Grant, worked out for the Denver Broncos, and Alouettes Eastern Division most outstanding rookie Tyson Philpott worked out for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure it won't be their only workouts.
Yeah, I'd hate to lose them already, but man, we understand it's sports.
Well,
it's sports.
That NFL window is there, and you'd be stupid not to take it. There's no question. I mean, yes, I would love nothing more to know that these guys are still going to be Alouettes for years to come, but you've got a finite opportunity, a finite amount of time to take advantage of an opportunity like this. And a workout is never a guarantee. All it really is you go there, you show your stuff, you show the coaches and scouts what you can do. And hey, if you blow the doors off and you really wow them, then yeah, they'll offer you a contract. If not, they'll just say, okay, thank you very much. And you go back to your Canadian Football League team.
Yeah, exactly.
Simple as that.
Exactly.
And you know what? It's if nothing else, it makes them richer for the experience to at least go and see if they can do it, if they can match up, if they can go head to head with other potential football players in the States and see what they're up against and see what they can do. Because you've seen what they can do on the football field here in Canada. But NFL game, just a little bit different. So especially when it comes to the receiving position, because there's no waggle in the NFL. Like, you got to be able to show that you can pretty much go from 0 to 60 right away as soon as the ball is snapped. You got to show you got the hands too. You got to show you can run the routes. I mean, like when it comes to the receiving position, I mean, it's a little bit of a different animal than what you would expect to see here in the Canadian Football League. But I mean, you got 2 young, hungry guys like Philpott and Julian Grant. I mean, I definitely don't fault them for taking that shot, for going and seeing what it is. If nothing else, it'll up their game when it comes to when they come back to the Alouettes. If for whatever reason they don't make it on an NFL squad, they can come back richer for the experience and know exactly what they have to do to get to that next level. I mean, that's the beautiful thing is these guys are still so young and still have a lot left in the tank.
As we mentioned, we are going to be speaking with Mario Cecchini, and when we get back from this, and it's a must listen to. If you've been listening to over the past couple of years, this is a must listen to because we always get some tidbits, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show. But when we're done with the interview, we will come back, have our year-end review, and finish up the broadcast season for 2022. In what has become an annual tradition here at the Alouettes Flightdeck podcast, we wanted to make sure that we spoke with a gentleman who could get us up to date on season-ending Alouettes news, what hopefully will be coming up for the 2023 season, and any type of tidbits that we can get out of him. On the line with us now, President of the Montreal Alouettes, Mario Cecchini. Hey, Mario. For the 3rd straight year in a row, thanks for joining us.
It's a great pleasure. How are you both gentlemen doing?
Doing wonderful. And you know what? It's funny. Like you figure like December, people think about the holidays. They think about the end of the year, everything like that. And like, there's all sorts of traditions with that. And to me, like this is becoming a tradition of ours and we're absolutely here for it.
Yes, of course. Yeah. And speaking of that, just leading into that, by the way, Mario, we know that we at least have to ask first off, we know that your contract is coming up with the Alouettes. We want to continue our yearly tradition. Are you able to give us any update on where your contract situation is, and will we be seeing you as president in 2023?
Well, for sure, it's my wish. No real update at this point. We're very, very busy right now, and we're gonna talk through this and hopefully get it done pretty soon. So that's my wish, Tim. Okay. That obviously we go on. Not finishing because it's never finished, but pursuing and going on building what we have started to build since the rebuild, and in a post-COVID era, so many challenges, but absolutely my wish.
Yeah. For those who may have missed it, give us a quick synopsis of what you mentioned in the Alouettes end of year press conference. I know you mentioned specifically about TV and radio and stuff like that, but give us a quick synopsis on what you mentioned to everybody in the media.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Well, basically, guys, we have a lot. The way I like to say it is, we have a lot of indicators that are green. It never goes up as fast as you want it to, or as fast as you want. That you would wish that the public would respond or the sponsors would respond. But I have to admit, it's on in the right direction. So we have to work on our patience a little bit. Listen, we've raised our ticket sales this year again. Very good in the first comparison where we have a full season now. Obviously, I'm not comparing to last year because we had 7 games, but comparing to 2019, where the same thing, about the same result also on the field, 10-8 season versus a 9-9 season, albeit started difficult this year, but we recuperated in time, and so sales are up. Business Club was sold out again. Same thing with the boxes, still went way up versus 2019, and even on a prorated basis, higher than last year. Obviously, the sponsorships, we started with a very low base in 2019 because a lot of clients had deserted at that time because of the uncertainty before we got on board. So happy with where we are at this point, and we've enlarged our team. We've added a salesperson, so I'm very optimistic for the future. So that's on basically the business side. And on football, well, before I quit the business side, you were mentioning ratings. The ratings keep going up since 2019 on RDS, particularly. Radio is happy with us. So it's really good in terms of how the team is popular, and the team is gathering more and more fans. The challenge is to get more of them, as you know, at the stadium. Consumer behavior has changed a lot since COVID. People, I was listening last week. There was a singer, one of the singer called Cœur de Pirate, whose sales probably, one of the top singers in Quebec, and she was saying that she's having difficulty selling tickets now in order to get people off their buns, off their couches, and obviously there's less people downtown. So I'm not telling you things that you don't know, but it just had the challenges, plus really habits that have transformed themselves. So that's on the boring business side, quote unquote, when I say boring, of course. But obviously on the football field, well, that's where you guys can analyze it the same way I can. Very tough start, but did the changes that we felt was needed to be done. Even after the changes, a little bit of adjustment period, as you know, no Cam changing some of the structure of the defense in particular. And obviously with a different OC, AC taking over for Kahari, a lot of things change, and basically we finished 8-4 if I look at it from the perspective of the last 12 games after that Winnipeg win, where we went a low point of being 2-6, and that Winnipeg game turned it around for us, and we built from there and ended up at 12-4 in the last 2 games inclusive of the playoffs. So I think we're on a ride. We were on a ride. Unfortunate game in Toronto, but the positive after a month, because it still hurts, but after a month you sort of say, okay, guys, at least we did go further than the last 8 years, and we offered our fans our playoff win on November 6th. So that was quite a thrill, that game. Wish we could have gone further, but it was not meant for this year. So overall, positive year from that point of view after a start that was very difficult.
And by the way, for those who may have not seen it, I don't know if they showed it on the broadcast, Mario, or not, and I know I mentioned it to you personally, but when Cliff and I were there at the game, this man that we call our president is not just only a businessman, but he is a huge fan. And I told Mario, I don't think I've ever seen him so excited after the William Stanback touchdown. He was acting like a fan himself. So if you guys ever have any concerns that he's one or the other, he's both. This gentleman is both. Very much so.
Well, listen, first of all, I cannot hold back. So it's fun because for years I've been watching and jumping up and down and getting on my knees in my living room or in the stands. and when William, especially what you're referring to, when William scored, I thought that was it. I thought at this point, okay, guys, that 21-3, we were losing by 18. And I said, at this point, we're back 24, 21. It was like 13 minutes. It was 28 minutes left in the game. It was right after the start of third quarter. So I said, we're in. This is us. This is our game. And I was so excited. Yeah, Will gave us a 50-yard run or just about. So it was a tremendous run also, in between 3 or 4 of these Toronto guys that could not catch up to him, and him finishing tumbling in the end zone and Gino right there behind him. So it was a great moment. It was a great moment in a very tough game, but that was a great moment.
Yeah, for sure. Now, one question, by the way, and I'm hoping you can give a little bit of insight on this, because you mentioned when it comes to TV and the French ratings and stuff like that, that to me, at least in, I guess maybe the English side when it comes to fans, we really don't get to hear what the actual ratings are for RDS. Because when the league usually puts out, their press releases and gives the numbers for a previous week's games, Alouette games seem to be lower, obviously, because they don't include RDS numbers. And or either that, Mario, or they're basing it off of, the estimates that have been put out years prior. Do you know what the actual numbers, what the Alouettes actually averaged on RDS during the year? So at least we can get the fans a little bit more information on the numbers?
Well, what I can tell you, because typically these ratings, to your point of RDS, they don't like to necessarily share it, but somehow there's some other sites that give the numbers out. But when you add when you add the RDS numbers, the Alouettes are usually the teams that have the most listeners of their games, very close with Saskatchewan, 1 or 2. The 2 top rated games of the year, 2 out of 3 the Alouettes were part of. So that was not the case in the recent years, because RDS finally got up back to where it should be. And let's say that usually on most games we're north of about 220, 230, 240. And basically that number was probably half of that in 2018. So that's when I say 18, 19, 21, and 22, obviously reminding people that we haven't played in 20.
Right.
So that's when I say it's close to double. That's where it comes from. Obviously, there's games when you're in the West, for example, and it's the 9 p.m. start here. Those are tougher games, but typically we're able to gather around those numbers on a very, very, very regular basis. So, and the important thing this year is that when you couple TSN and RDS actually is recording growth for their CFL games and Alouette games versus TSN, where it's more stable. So we're happy that RDS can help their English counterpart in that sense.
Looking at the entire season itself, obviously, as you mentioned, we're coming off of our first full season since COVID. There were so many good. What was the biggest challenge for the team in 2022?
It's a very good question. There were so many. At the beginning of the season, Tim, I viewed everything as a challenge. And obviously, there's always 2 parts to that answer, football side and business side. Mm-hmm. Business side was obviously the behavior, as I've mentioned earlier. I keep going back to that because it's very, very challenging right now to sell any tickets. So that was, to me, a challenge, and I was happy that we were able to raise it by close to 30%. So that was good. I was happy that we gathered close to 20,000 2 or 3 times, like biggest crowd since 2017. Another good sign. The schedule was tough. 3 Thursdays to begin with, but then we had 2 afternoon games, or 3 afternoon games if you count Thanksgiving, and 2 Saturdays at 4. That was great. Not sure we're going to get that in 2023 because we've changed our way of doing it a little bit. So those were challenging, and obviously everything, actually, even the marketing budgets right now that you hear about from companies and so on, with the rising cost and some of the cost cutting that some people have to do in order to provide on order to supplement to higher cost of workforce or materials. Marketing budgets are always the one where you cut, right?
Right.
First, because it's not people. So that was a challenge. And on the field, well, we wanted to have a winning season. We wanted to make sure after a 7-7 season and a disappointing loss in Hamilton last year that we at least go further. So we did not get the winning season per se in terms of numbers, because we ended up at 509-9. But I think that the way we did in the playoffs, and particularly the way the team played, I mean, even in Toronto game, there were some obviously mishaps on defense, but at the end of the day, it was a game that was still close, was still one score. Was very happy over the year that we, aside from one game, that Friday night Labor Day against Ottawa, aside from that game, we're in it all the time until late. And we provided a competitive team. I think we provided a good show and good entertainment for our fans. So those were the things that I wanted us as a team to accomplish. Mm-hmm. And I think we're more on the good side of what we wanted to accomplish, because obviously there's many more things. Say last year, again, remember, gentlemen, in Jan, Feb, and close to, I believe, mid-March of 2021, we were all at home still. Yeah. All with COVID. Nobody was in the office. So you can say whatever you want about working from home, but it's not the same from a team perspective. And definitely our preparation was great, was good, but was not optimal, So this year now I'm counting much more on us being able to think with our partners, to look at stuff where nothing is sort of delayed all the time, right, and that we can get back to some form of normalcy. Sure. If I can use that word.
Sure. And one last business question I'll let Cliff in here. The change last year when it came to virtual ads, I always wanted to ask you this. So now TSN and RDS are going with virtual ads. What is your opinion on the virtual ads? Is the team making money off these virtual ads? I mean, obviously you don't have to paint them on the field anymore, so you're saving some money there. But overall, as a franchise and as the president of a franchise, what are your thoughts on the virtual ads now being run by TSN and RDS?
First of all, we are making money in the sense that the conversation was very simple. When we put them on the field, we were making money. Mm-hmm. And so it was our money, like TSN, RDS, had no say in it. But then when you turn around and you say to RDS, help us out, because they wanted a cleaner field. They quite frankly don't like necessarily the fact that the field was full of ads. Right. So basically they turn around and they say, okay, we'll give you that, but then we'll go virtual, but we'll keep the money, of course, because it was our money before, it's still our money now. So that's the way that we made it work. So we do obviously make money off it. And TSN and RDS are happy because they get a cleaner field to work with. So that came out to be a good deal for both parties.
Oh, good to hear, Cliff.
Okay, let's go back to the start of the year, Mario, specifically training camp. As you recall, with the impending player strike that thankfully was averted, there was definitely some challenges as far as trying to communicate that to fans versus what other teams were doing. Can you take us just through the process of what was going on as far as trying to convey the message to the fans that things were, I don't want to say not 100%, but you had to know that something was going on and that was going to affect the start of training camp?
I'm going to try answering, Cliff. I'm not sure I get 100% the sense of your question, but basically, I think we were always trying to be pretty straightforward with the fans and the sponsors, for that matter, who have their skin in it, who have some skin in the game. So it wasn't clear until about. Sorry, I mean, it was, to me, it wasn't. I wasn't afraid that we would not start the season until maybe, because that stoppage happened on a Saturday night. So until maybe that Thursday, where I started to think, okay, maybe this won't start on time. And we all got a little bit worried at that point. And it turned out to be true that the players were going to vote against some of what the executive had recommended. That was very particular. So they wanted to get back. And when that happens, well, you sort of figure, okay, guys, that's not necessarily too bad, but not necessarily good either. So, and you're not in their camp, so you try to figure it out. But in the end, we got the resolution. I think one of the best things we did, Cliff, if you remember, is to keep the players, giving them, come into camp, and if ever there's a stoppage, we will keep you there. We will feed you, and we will lodge you. So can I say that? Lodged you? Does that work?
Yeah.
Provide housing.
Mm-hmm.
So
correct.
So the players could come and not be, afraid not to have anything to eat or not know where to stay. So when that stoppage happened, I think it helped us. They recognized that we wanted to have a quick resolution. We wanted to move ahead. There was no way after COVID and a shortened season, two things that never happened in 100 years, that we were going to have now the third thing that hadn't happened since the 70s, I believe, linger on too much. So we got to work. The team of the CFL got to work. We all talked to some players. I got involved with our leadership on some talks on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I think by the Thursday we got it done, and we were back on the field on the Friday. So, and it was important because you probably remember in Alberta, because of different laws around labor laws, they were not able, like you have to give 1 week of notice. So they were practicing that all week, and we were opening against Calgary. Mm-hmm. So we lost a week of camp versus Calgary, who's not a bad team at all. So we were all, for us, it was extra motivation to get the resolution. And so I hope we did a good thing communicating that to fans. I know I was doing my best on answering when I got direct questions, but it was challenging because you're in the fog, you don't really know right now. That's when it becomes a bit of an adversarial process, and we don't want that with a partner like the players are, but for a couple of days, it becomes an adversarial process where everybody's thinking how to best move forward for the collective good, but through their own eyes. So, and at one point, you got to meet in the middle. And I think that's what we basically did. Everybody poured a little water in their wine, as we say, and we were able to move forward. I don't know, Cliff, am I answering your question? I want to make sure that.
Oh, absolutely. And what I was going to say, too, was that it started out kind of rocky, but then by the end, I think training camp ended up being a success, especially out in Trois-Rivières. The first time the Alouettes have had training camp there. Can you tell us if there's plans for the Alouettes to go back in 2023 to Trois-Rivières, or is there perhaps another location in mind?
No, there's actual plans because we feel that we owe them something. we owe them a week of presence there. But yeah, we actually are looking at Trois-Rivières again, looking at different options. But Trois-Rivières is in the mix for sure. Hopefully we can announce that. I want to get it done by, mid-Jan, late Jan, something like that, where we can announce it all. So obviously there's the Christmas break, and we have winter meetings in January, the first week, the week of the 9th. I'm in Calgary with the whole league. So we should be able, what I'm saying is that we sort of lose 3 weeks, if you will, with the break and that week in Calgary. So hopefully if we get it done by the end of Jan, we'll be able to announce something, yes.
All right. And you actually led perfectly into my next question. This year you took over as lead governor of the Alouettes. Take us through that experience as far as being the sort of go-to person for the CFL as far as the Alouettes go.
Well, it's been fun. Typically speaking, the governors and the presidents are often together in the same meeting, so it's not as if everything is new, but you are privy to part of the businesses that is different. And the majority ownership trusted me with that since August. So actually, the next second board meeting is next week, second in terms of since September. So so it's been good. I mean, it's really great people, guys. There's a lot of work to be done. Everybody recognizes that. Tough situations for some, easier for others, but nothing comes easy, really. Good group, people who can work together, people who can talk to each other, people who can disagree respectfully. And, as we like to say sometimes, there's an expression that I like a lot that says, strong opinions, loosely held. So at one point, you got to also be able to listen to the other party and open up and maybe see it a different way and again meet somewhere where everybody can live with the resolution. So it's a good group of people, very mature and very, very focused on getting things done. And we did, in a way. We did a lot of work with the revenue share in 2019, with the way we work the schedule next year, where we have different objectives collectively, and understanding that there's going to be some sacrifices here and there, but the collective good is better. I think that everybody understands that, and moving forward, it's a good sign for everybody to move forward like that.
Definitely. I think as long as there's clarity and people understand what each person's role is, I mean, as they say, like many hands make light work. So it has to help make things easier for you to communicate with the league and to essentially work together. Because essentially that's what it comes down to is there's 9 partners in this corporation, if you will.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the way we have to look at it. We have to look at it like a big corporations with 9 divisions. Or actually 10, if you can. The league has also a very, division on its own. So absolutely, that's the way to look at it.
Okay. Now, with Danny Machocha, as far as the work he's done this year, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst and 10 being the best, where would you rank his 2022 season as far as general manager and as head coach? That's
a very good question. I would be curious if you get Danny on the podcast, ask him the same question and don't tell him my answer because I think because he's going to be humble about it. Listen, guys, it's pretty close. And all admitting that perfection doesn't exist, it's in the 9s as far as I'm concerned. I mean, as a GM, you saw the end of the year when we needed to turn things around, when we lost William Stenback in game 1, boom. William Fletcher was let go by Edmonton. We had our eyes on him. Boom, he's on our team. Ty Beverett, moving Pickett to a different position, starting with Marc-Antoine Dequoy, who led the team with 4 picks. And, I mean, clutch picks, important picks. 3 out of 4 for sure were clutch picks. As a GM, I think we got the most, just also signing all of our O-line last year at the end of the year in order to be ready for 2022. How important it is for that group to be together. So as a GM, it's a great rating as far as I'm concerned. But then obviously as a coach, as I said, turned it around. The results are there. After we had some adjustments done, the 3-4 games worked up. He started 1-3 in his case also. But then boom, just got turned around. That game in Winnipeg really did it for us. That's when Wes Sutton, I believe, became the player that he became during that game. Was unbelievable. He did the fumble. He did the save for the pass on the second down in the overtime. That game turned us around. And then again, as I said, we just went 7-3. Sitting at 2-6, we were saying, guys, we need to go basically 7 games. We need to go 7-3, 8-2. We believe we could do 8-2. So 7-3 came out. Nobody would have said that we would add that result with the last 10 games. So I ended up at 9-9. So that's why it's sort of a victorious 9-9, if you will, one way to look at it. And we went further in the playoffs. So I'm giving him a very high mark, Danny, this year. And you have to imagine, problem with Danny is that when he started as a coach, he wouldn't let go of he still did his duty as GM and looking at players and looking at film and through the preparation. So that's why it's 2 full-time jobs, believe me. And definitely See, there could have been sometimes I understand there's some circumstances where you may want to have the same person doing both. But Danny's so knowledgeable in terms of evaluating talent because that's the key. The best coach without the tools cannot build a house, right? Cannot build a winning team. So we need the tools first and foremost. And obviously, Danny always feels now that we're going to pick another coach with a relationship that he's going to have with that coach. He's also going to be so helpful anyway in terms of how that relationship will go. So I feel we win big on both fronts.
Okay. Do you think that? Well, I don't expect you to say yes or no either way. But has he had much in the way of discussion as far as at least trying to get your input as far as like the next head coach would be for the Alouettes?
Yeah, well, we work together on that. Obviously, Danny is going to be the decision maker as far as football is concerned. Where I come in, if I meet one or two, when I meet the finalists, if you will, it's all about my part is about sort of the cultural fit, if you will, the community involvement. What kind of person he is, what kind of character he is. So then he gets a second opinion from somebody who obviously may or may not know that person as well as he does. So it's just like when you hire anybody, you will look at, you have an HR person with you who has different eyes. But for me, it's important that the coach understand that he's coming into a province, a culture that is different, whether he's Canadian or American. There's a predominant French language here that the person needs to understand. The culture, therefore, is different also. If he has kids, he needs to understand all of this, how things will evolve. His wife, his family, is that going to take a toll, not take a toll? All of this is important, first of all, to understand the pressure that he's going to be in. And then, obviously, we need someone involved in the community. I cannot have a coach, for instance, that will not go to hospitals, that will not go to Saint-Cassette once in a while, that will not go to events with, we're about to announce a deal with, not a deal, a partnership with La DPJ, so we'll be helping kids, underprivileged kids. So I cannot have a coach that turns its back on that. He needs to be present in the community as we go on building. I need to have a coach that's going to shake hands with the fans on the sidelines before the game, who's going to, take time with the sponsors if we bring him to practice once in a while. All of these things, we need to look ourselves in the eye and say, listen, this is not an option here. Whether we win, whether we lose, that's the way we work it here. We want to be close to the people, and hopefully after a game when there's people on the field, that they also come out and take the time to shake hands again, win or lose. The fans are there for us. We need to be there for them. So that's the part we play. And obviously, with my limited football knowledge compared to these guys, it's always fun to have an opinion and exchange on that. When you hear interviews, you hear different visions, and some strikes me different than it strikes Danny. So that's always interesting to discuss. But it's football first. But football without community involvement probably won't fly. But it's football first.
So it's safe to say that Bill Belichick will not be the head coach for the Alouettes.
It's safe to say that Bill Belichick will not be the head coach of the Alouettes.
Okay.
I didn't see that coming, Cliff.
Mike Tomlin could, but I think he's busy right now.
I know a certain co-host that would be very interested to see Mike Tomlin as head coach of the Alouettes.
That would be very interesting.
Oh well,
that would be very interesting to say.
Everybody knows I'm a when it comes to the NFL, I'm a Steelers fan. So I very much like
Mario, you're even higher in my book now. You and I need to talk.
There you go. Well, he's such. Talk about stability and talk about I think he's up to 17 or years now, I think, of winning seasons, or I should say not winning seasons, because there's a couple of 500s in there. Just unbelievable.
Exactly.
The level of competition there is. Yeah.
Cliff, if you don't mind, let's go forward and look a little bit to 2023, Mario. And one thing I wanted to ask you, and I'm sure you've already been asked about this many a time, but it is a story that reared its head early in the season, and it was actually brought up again during the year-end press conference that you guys had. This talk or rumor or this of about giving Alouette fans a full-size field at Percival Molson Stadium. Now, obviously, there are a lot of variables in order to get this thing done. Is there any truth to are the Owls actually looking at the possibility of expanding the size to a full regulation CFL field?
Just to be clear for the listeners, you're talking about the end zones.
That is correct, sir. That is
the
correct.
rest of the field is regular. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely, there is. And you will remember, Tim and Cliff, you will remember, we're up 3-0 against Winnipeg. Gino catches the ball, falls out of bounds in the corner where the angle is. In 8 stadiums out of 9, that's a touchdown. And we go up 10-0. Instead, we're out of bounds. And then we obviously just did a field goal. So that did it for me, because I was actually upset that I went through 2021 without thinking about it, without realizing it, because nobody really brought it up and the guys adjust. But we need to get to regular end zones. I don't know if we will. I want to be clear. We're talking to Miguel, obviously, as we speak. Actually, we have a meeting set up. I don't think it's late December or early January. It's one of the two. But literally, that game was on a Saturday, I believe, on a Thursday against Winnipeg. And the Monday, I was running the field with a measuring tape with a gentleman from the athletics department of McGill. And we were sort of doing the angles, and it actually cut. If you know McGill, for the people who don't, there's a racing track, how do you say, like a jogging track around the field. So obviously we need to cut into that track, but it's not used for competition, I'm told. So these are all the discussions we need to look at. Obviously, we will also need to have some form of cushion on the barriers, because they'd be obviously closer. So you want to protect your players. Obviously, that's priority number one. So but it's not a rumor, Tim, not at all. It's on the agenda, and I'll do my best to convince people, convince Miguel that to make it work. We need to find a way. Now, maybe we won't. Maybe it's impossible. I don't know. Maybe they'll tell me we can't do it. And then we'll just go on the way we are. But definitely not without a battle.
Yeah, and
I mean that in obviously a figurative way.
Right. And for those who don't know, since the Alouettes have been back into Montreal since '96, they have changed the field twice. And the last time that they put a brand new field in was 10 years ago. So, hey, we're about at that time. I think it's been every 10 years they made modifications to the field. So, fingers crossed that we can actually get those full-size end zones.
Well, that's part of the conversation right now also, in terms of the field is aging. Obviously, they gained 1 year. They gained 1 year with COVID. So that's going to be part. I mean, I don't think there's many years left in that field before it gets a little bit more not dangerous, but not as safe for the players. Right. So you're right, but we're trying to do it before that.
Cool.
Now, if they change it, then it makes it a little bit easier. But we have to find a way.
Yeah. Do you have any insight on when what the team you mentioned it before? Can you give us any ideas on which way the team is leaning towards the days that home games will be held on in 2023?
What I can tell you, it's the schedule has not been approved. It's actually, we were in a meeting today about it, so we're still discussing it. And when we do a schedule, we usually have multiple versions, because every team, first of all, you have to know, I think I've told you this maybe on the field once or twice, no team is happy about their schedule, right?
Yep.
No team.
Yep.
That's right. That's where it starts. So you have the level of what can you live with, and with an odd number of teams, it's even more complicated. So, but right now, I think we may, for the first time in a very long time, look at not too many Thursdays. One thing that's in the mix is different days of the week, maybe looking at Sundays before NFL starts. So those are the things that are looked at. But right now we are there. We are pushing in our case for in Montreal probably a little bit less Thursdays, more Fridays, Saturdays, and as many afternoon games as we can have. So that's where we are.
That's fantastic
at this point. And hopefully we can announce it. I think the league has a goal to announce it before Christmas for sure.
Well, if that's the case, Mario, I will be very happy, because I've said it many a time that since the Owls returned in '96, they are the team. They are the team in the CFL that has had the most Thursday home games. So it's than any other team. So I'm glad to hear some modifications, and I guess it's a matter of just how things are changing in the league and people, how Thursday games are figured. Because TSN obviously made they've made a push for Thursdays, and I know it did well, but it has to be. You got to change with the times, right? So I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Well, Thursdays were very good in Montreal.
Yeah.
When downtown was full and was different. It turned a little bit over the past 2-3 years. And again, I'm not making any announcement tonight, Tim. Don't be upset if we have a couple of Thursdays, but that's that's the way we want to look at it. That's the way we want to push on it. So we'll see where we land, because it's a lot of stadium availabilities also guide the schedules in other markets. It's always the same thing. Yeah. So same thing.
My fingers are still crossed, Mario. They're still crossed. So I'm hoping.
Yeah, there you go.
Cliff.
So let's talk a little bit about what you saw this year on the field. Obviously, when this season started, it was Vernon Adams at quarterback. When the season ended, it was Trevor Harris at quarterback, even though Harris was in camp from day one as well. Talk about the progression that you've been able to see from your perspective of this team from when it started to where it ultimately ended.
Well, you talked about Trevor. I think a great leader of men, a tremendous leader, calm. He brought some stability. He brought some assurance. He played extremely well. Even when Vernon was still with us, I was talking to him, practices, sidelines. He says, I fully understand you guys not taking Trevor out. He's doing great. So I think as a team from there, we sort of grew into believing, and it's going to sound cliche, but believing that the outcome of a game can always go on our side. I think we literally grew in terms of learning to win those close games, learning to come back, and not getting defeated or, we lost a couple of games when we had some leads and we just let it, the first one, the one against Edmonton, where we led big time and we just let it slip, We had to learn to cope with injuries. I think we did that well also. The next man up type of philosophy, as we were never distraught by losing a player, even though it was unfortunate. But so we I think grew a lot, gained in maturity as the year went on, and obviously resulted in a place where we're always highly competitive, never giving up. And truly, shocked when we lost, because we always thought that we were going to win that game. You obviously know that you won't be perfect, but every game you start with your game plan, you have a game plan, you can't win the game. And we were able to present that, and, sometimes you lose very tight ones. But we were in the game, as I said, aside from one game, I think we were in all of them until the end. So, satisfied with the way we grew and met all challenges.
And what about the in-game experience at Percival Molson Stadium? That too had its challenges and took a little while to get going. But by the time we got to the Eastern semifinal, I think this city was at a fever pitch when it came to football. Like, you found a way to win back the city of Montreal and get people behind the Alouettes again.
Well, that's nice of you to mention that. I think in all the sporting events you guys go to, I go to, it's the experience at Percival Molson, as it's right up there. You feel you're on top of the players, right? You feel so close to the game when those horns get going and when the crowd gets in it. And just in the semifinal, just like I think Hamilton had 3 procedure calls. Evans even went up. His arm went up at one point because he just, sort of gave up against the crowd. It was nice to see that, and it gets the players so worked up. It's just unbelievable. But and when the people open their cell phones, and we got all of that this year. It was just an unbelievable experience, and I just wish more people now would come and see and believe it and see it, and we need to do a better job probably to demonstrate it and show it we do our best on our social media, but these are the things that TV doesn't always catch or they don't want to show because they're focused on the game. But man, is it ever a very, very solid experience. Yeah, you're absolutely right on that.
Mm-hmm. That's one thing I've said numerous times, and I've been to just about every stadium in the Canadian Football League, and I will say it, like, call me biased if you want, but I mean, I think as far as the actual in-game experience and just the crowd, when you get them excited, when you give them something to cheer for, you're not going to find much better than what you do over at Percival Molson.
No, that's for sure. Montreal is known to support winners, and that's what we're trying to be.
And obviously, looking into 2023, I'm sure you guys are already working hard on getting together, which what you guys will do per game when it comes to what you'll offer as far as fan experiences. I'm sure you're working on hopefully, if it works well, fan trips. If the trains or the buses are available in 2023, but yeah. I can only imagine what you guys are going to be offering the fans next season.
Well, listen, we have to outdo ourselves. This year was brand new, was the field experience before the game that was maybe not new of all times, but certainly renewed. The 5 à 7 were some fun stuff where we had some Q&As in the end with specific players. It was fun. We have a meeting on that tomorrow, actually. Tomorrow at 2, we have a meeting on team games for next year, so we're already on it. And yes, I'm glad you mentioned fan trains and fan planes, because fan trains, the issue was with, not blaming them, but the issue was with VRI when we wanted to do it. It was just lack of what they call a ghost train, and they need more staff, and they just didn't have the staff, like you keep hearing in a lot of places right now. So that's why we couldn't organize it at the last minute. But we'll try to see next year. Obviously, we were ready to have a plane for the Grey Cup. We would have had a Grey Cup plane to take some fans we had a package all set up to take some fans to Regina this year. So that would have been fun, but did not materialize. But yeah, I mean, we have to keep growing. We have to keep that experience in that what I like to call a romantic stadium of ours, which is a Wrigley Field of the CFL, if you will. But it's really old. It's 1914, but it is what it is, and we have to maximize that experience. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Mario, again, third year in a row, we really appreciate your time. Cliff and I want to congratulate you and your organization, everybody behind the scenes who did one hell of a job this year. We can only guess what we're going to be offered next year as fans over at Percival Molson Stadium. But again, we appreciate your time. We hope that we get to do this for the 4th straight year next year. So our fingers are crossed. Our fingers are crossed on that. And okay, last thing for you, if somebody is on the fence, Mario, and they're saying, I don't know if I should buy season tickets for the Montreal Alouettes, what would you say to convince them to purchase one of the multitude of offerings that the team currently has?
Well, I think you just said it. First of all, there is a price for everybody, literally. And I think we just said it also. At starting at $27, I think it's probably the best show in town. The most fun, where you can be close. You can be close to the actors. If you're lucky, your name will be brought up, and you can be on the field after the game. I mean, all of these things are absolutely great, and it's really. It's not too demanding in the new world that we are in. It's not the commitment like other sports where it's 42 games or 18, 20 games. It's 10 nights and it's 10 parties as far as I'm concerned. So it's something that when you live once, you usually want to come back. So that's what I would tell them.
Perfect.
That's what I would tell them.
Well, again, Mario, all the best to you. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Happy holidays, and we hope to talk to you very, very shortly.
Thank you very much. Happy holidays to you guys and all of your listeners. Take good care.
Doesn't disappoint. Mario does not disappoint. Thanks to Mario once again for joining us to talk about the Alouettes in 2022 and to give us a sneak peek. He's always able to come through with a little few tidbits about what's coming up with the team.
Mm-hmm. And we are so lucky, Tim, to be able to say that we can speak with the president of the Montreal Alouettes, to be able to speak with someone so high up in the organization and get his thoughts on things, and just sort of he'll pull back the curtain just a little bit and kind of explain things and let us know what we've come to expect over the years. And always look forward to this. I mean, the end of the season is kind of a downer because means no football now until June. but being able to speak with Mario and get some insight as to what, and just it keeps it going. It keeps the fire going just a little bit. And, like I'm already looking forward to 2023 without question. And I mean, as long as Mario is a part of this organization, things are going to be moving up and continue to keep climbing, keep reaching for that next level. And to be a part of something like that is truly tremendous.
Yep. I totally agree. It's been a year, dude. Not only broadcast wise for us, but for the team itself. I mean, so many different things that happened this past season from our training camp experience to, which was fun, by the way. And wherever training camp's going to be, we're going to try to set something up again, obviously for next year, because our 3-day experience was just an utter joy. From the CBA failing to the CBA to the CBA getting signed to
It was a roller coaster ride.
Oh, and that was just preseason. That was just preseason itself, dude.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Like you go back to everything. I mean, like the fact that training camp got delayed, the first day of camp didn't happen the way it was supposed to. Holy cow! I mean, so many questions were, so many things were up in the air, and we just didn't know what the hell to make of any of it. But then when the dust settled and everything got worked out, and they started camp again, and we were able to go for 3 days and experience everything. You're right. It was so much fun. It was a great experience. I think we got to see a lot of stuff. We got to talk to a lot of the guys and just get their perspectives on things. And it made for some great podcasting too, because we were able to share these experiences with you, the listeners, and we were so thankful to be able to do so. And
one of the best listened to episodes of the year, by the way. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think a lot of people, just assume training camp is okay, whatever. They just come and they, do football stuff. And yeah, for the most part, that's what it is. But there was lots of other stuff too. And there's lots of other things to experience as well. And I think we did a pretty good job, hopefully selling the idea of going to training camp. If you've never been to training camp, folks, I mean, I can't stress enough. I mean, that is, as far as I'm concerned, the prime time as a football fan to go and truly experience it and get to meet the players and get to learn how this team gets put together, how you go from, 75 players down to 46 or 46 players. I mean, it's incredible. It's such a great experience,
and seeing the stars come out, as the stars invent themselves, the future stars. It was just seeing Tyson Philpott starting out. He didn't start off very well because he had a pre-injury coming into camp. Same thing with Jake Winicky. Stanback. He was hurting before he got hurt. It was just interesting to see how camp started, how things progressed over the years, and from, seeing the new stars, the potential new stars that we got, Cole Speaker, Davis Alexander. Camp's fun. And if anybody has a chance, whether it be in Trois-Rivières, whether it be in Quebec City, wherever it's going to be, as Mario alluded to in the interview, try to come up there. Try to make a weekend of it if you can, because you won't regret it.
Yeah, I mean, if you love football, and truly love football, you'll appreciate every aspect of it. There's, as we keep saying, there's just so much to experience, so much stuff that you wouldn't normally necessarily think about, but once you see it happening in front of you, you're like, holy cow, this is incredible. The fact you were talking about like the future of this team. I even go back to the draft when the Alouettes selected Philpott. Like I was shocked. I'm like, really? I mean, as we talked about, like the national receiver position was kind of like the redheaded stepchild for the Alouettes, no love whatsoever. But then signing Hergy Mayala in free agency, the emergence of Kion Julian Grant, and now with Tyson Philpott being a part of this, like, okay, all of a sudden national receiver means something in Montreal. And sure enough, this season you saw the emergence of Kion Julian Grant and of Tyson Philpott becoming major parts of this offense.
No, I agree, and then obviously leading into week one, where it seemed that, which has happened before in Alouettes history, but week one was just an utter disaster when it came to losing huge names on this team from Greg Reed, one of the major players on defense, and obviously William Stanback. we lost quite a few players in week one, and it really did not look good for the Owls or for head coach Kahari Jones.
No, and that was it. And you also heard, too, a lot of the rumors swirling about the safety of Kahari's job as head coach of the Alouettes, even though it was him that helped bring this team back to relevance and did a tremendous job in making the Alouettes a competitive football team. A lot of people were saying, well, Kahari's on the hot seat if he doesn't get out to a big start and provide instant success. He could be shown the door because there's a guy in the general manager's chair that I think wants to be a coach again. And it was like that noise just got louder and louder every week. And the fact that the Alouettes kind of stumbled out of the gate just didn't do them any favors. And with each loss, the noise got louder and louder and louder. And not even winning the home opener against the Saskatchewan Roughriders could save Kahari, essentially. I think it bought him a little more time, but ultimately, like I said, you're only as good as your last game. And that game out in Saskatchewan, where the Roughriders, who had a season to forget, quite frankly, one of their highlights had to be the absolute throttling of the Alouettes out there. And that pretty much meant, that the writing was pretty much on the wall at that point for Kahari and also for Baron Miles, too, defensive coordinator, to, they end up being shown the door.
Yep, and obviously the change in quarterback, which occurred when VA was pulled in the second quarter after just going 2 for 4. That was that is where a gentleman that we are always going to love, we're always going to be proud of, no matter where he's playing. VA had to take a step back. He was now going to be the number 2 behind Trevor Harris, and Trevor Harris became our starting quarterback for the Montreal Alouettes. So
and I said we had our concerns when it came to Trevor Harris. I mean, he came in 2020. The Alouettes traded for him in 2021, and honestly did not play like the Trevor Harris that we were promised. And I know that definitely left a bit of a bad taste in our mouths. And then when the Alouettes re-signed him for pennies on the dollar, apparently, we were sold on the idea that, hey, we're getting a top-notch quarterback at a bargain rate. Like, okay, but did you not see what happened towards the tail end of 2021? Because I wouldn't have broken any bank to sign this guy. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're giving us the Trevor Harris of 2019 that absolutely shredded the Alouettes in the Eastern Final, okay, I'm on board. But there was no indication that Trevor Harris was around. But lo and behold, he showed up to camp. He was doing all the right things as far as, okay, I know this is Vernon's team. That I'm here to help. I'm here to be a part. If my number gets called, I'll be ready to go. And sure enough, when things got tough with VA, in came Trevor, and it didn't click right away. I'll be honest. It did take some time for him to find his footing. But once he got settled in, and once he got established a rapport with the receivers and got to be a part of this, I mean, like he turned things around. He really helped this team out. I mean, when he was bad, he was really bad. But I'm sure you can say that about just about a quarterback. When they're good, they're fantastic. When they're bad, they are bad. And we saw a lot of bad and a lot of good from Trevor Harris this year. I definitely have to give him his flowers because it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And towards the end of the season, Trevor Harris got it together. He found his groove. He found that winning formula. And it wasn't pretty at times. I can tell you, so many times in the first half, the offense just looked like a dog's breakfast. I mean, it was just not good at all. I mean, it was very conservative, very plain. There were times where I truly felt Trevor was just padding his stats more than anything else. Like, he was dinking and dunking his way down and just doing the little things. And now I've come to realize that sometimes it's in doing the little things where big things happen. Because in the second half, Tim, so many times, all of a sudden, this offense just figured it out and just started piling on the points. Like, they started making those outstanding plays. I mean, being able to throw to Geno Lewis certainly helps the cause. And finding, a great running back like Walter Fletcher, who after Standback went down, the Alouettes traded for. And what a move, because, I mean, Walter Fletcher, who also, too, went to the same university as Trevor Harris.
Yep.
He found his form, too, and looked absolutely outstanding. He played some fantastic football. And to kind of get that nod, if you will, from Trevor Harris, I mean, that I think that was all he needed. And all of a sudden, boom, now we've got a great running back. Even though William Sandback is on the mend, it's okay. We got this. We got Joshua Nantwi. We got Walter Fletcher. We're going to be good. And, once this offense figured itself out, yeah, it took a little while at times because, as I said, the first half, I think, was just more of a feeling out process to see what the opponent would do. And then once it was almost like I said, back in 2019, like the way they flipped the switch, and all of a sudden Vernon Adams just figured it out and just started scoring points. Well, Trevor Harris more or less did the same thing. He figured it out and started scoring points like this. And then this team just started winning and winning and winning. Yep. And ugly wins at times. I'm not going to lie, but I mean, they got it figured out. And sure enough, they went from being a 2-6 football team, ending up finishing 9-9. I mean, essentially going, 12-4? Like their last 16 games or something silly like that. I forget how Mario phrased it, but I mean, yeah, this team all of a sudden became a contender. And you got to thinking, this team could do it. We can go to the playoffs. We could go to the Grey Cup. And we could probably win the damn thing. Like, that's what this team did more than anything else, was give Alouettes fans hope that that there was something here, that there was something tangible. I mean, it truly was a case of it's not how you start, but how you finish. Because if you take a look at how things were back in July compared to how they were in October, November, night and day. You wouldn't even recognize this team.
Oh, for sure.
So many reasons.
Yeah. And obviously one of the low points was blowing that 19-point lead to Edmonton in a game that they should not have lost.
And that was actually, too, the first game with Danny Machocha as head coach and Noel Thorpe as defensive coordinator. And, man, fans were not impressed at the way that they just squandered that lead. And also, too, you couldn't help but notice that so many penalties, because that was the big thing with Kahari and Barron, was lack of discipline on this team. And, you got to get the discipline back. And sure enough, posting up all those penalties, I mean, that's still not a good look, especially when that's the reason why you're letting these guys go, is due to a quote unquote lack of discipline. And then your team does that. As I said, not a good look at all for Danny Mac or for Noel Thorpe in that case.
No.
But this was part of the growing pains. This was part of figuring it out. And yeah, it took some time. It definitely took some time for this team to find their way, find themselves just a little bit. And to a man, every time we talked to the players afterwards, even after these losses, like they said, this locker room is solid. We've got each other's backs. So we believe in each other. That was the one thing that I took away more than anything else, is that win or lose. And for that first part of the year, there was definitely a lot of lose. There was no quit. Like there was no, okay, this season's a wash. This season is nothing. Like we don't have a prayer. No, they believed in themselves. They believed in Trevor Harris as their leader. They believed in their offense. They believed in their defense as well, which after a while found their form as well. I mean, that's really what it came down to, is just this team finding itself at the right time.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, more than that, I mean, as you said, it all started with the 19-point lead, blown 19-point lead to Edmonton. I mean, from there, dude, some wild and crazy stuff here for the Alouettes this year. I mean, we had a 51-day homestand. A 51-day homestand. I'll say it one more time. A 51-day homestand. Longest in Alouettes history, and if my information is correct, it's the longest homestand in CFL history. Which is absolutely nuts. And then on top of that, when we come off playing on the road for the first time in 51 days, we get a game which didn't seem to be going all that well versus Edmonton. We don't play that well in Edmonton all that well. But then Tyrese Beverett and that 100-yard interception return for a touchdown. And it kept us going. I think he's still catching his breath from that run. My man was motoring down the field. Like, unbelievable. A little bit of a downer with Thanksgiving, losing again at Thanksgiving at home. Losing Reggie White for the season, but that really introduced us to Tyson Philpott and what he could do, because we had 3 Canadian receivers starting. What?
Mm-hmm.
Stanback was going to come back. We're going to have a potential three-headed monster at running back. Dom Davis not only tied, but broke the team record for most rushing touchdowns by a quarterback in a single season. Breaking the record that was held by VA set back in 2019. And even the wacky I think the first time ever that the Alouettes have lost a game on a walk-off rouge.
Yeah. And you know what, Tim? I'm glad you brought that up because that is, I think it has to haunt Alouettes fans, that particular instance, that particular game, and that particular play where Boris Bede misses a field goal that would have well, I mean, it would have won the game, but
I know how you're trying. I think it's trying to phrase it the right way, right?
Well, and here's the thing: like normally, if you miss a field goal, the returner can take it out of the end zone, and you go for overtime. But a missed field goal, if it sails out, like that's still a rouge. You try to prevent that, but unfortunately, Chandler White was trying to track the ball, caught it, but then caught it out of bounds, which is basically conceding the single. And I think about this, Tim, and I've been thinking about it for the past couple of weeks, even while I was at Grey Cup, thinking about this. Like, if somehow the Alouettes were able to win that game, that could have potentially changed everything. Because then the Alouettes, that game the next week at BMO Field wouldn't have been a glorified preseason game. It would have actually meant something. And if the Alouettes could have won that, they would have hosted the Eastern Final. And based on how when we went to Toronto, and we saw how this team played and how the Argos played at home, it gave them a decided advantage. Imagine if Montreal was hosting the Eastern Final. One could make the argument that based on how they were playing, how they played in the Eastern semifinal against Hamilton, who arguably was comparably just as good as what Toronto was, just they had their own set of woes and misfires throughout the season. One couldn't help but wonder, Tim, if the Alouettes were hosting the Eastern Final, could they have won in what would have been a rowdy Molson Stadium environment and gone on to the Grey Cup and played the Blue Bombers? I know William Stanback, we talked about that with him just a little bit, and he thinks about that too. And it's got to stick in his I know it does stick in his crotch. Gino too. He
said it multiple times too, not necessarily at the locker room sale, but he thinks too that if we had played the East Final in Montreal, we would have gone to the Grey Cup.
Yeah, and just, again, that's not to say that we would have automatically won the Grey Cup just because the Bombers lost to the Argos, but I mean, we played this Winnipeg team tough too. I mean, we definitely would have given them a fight for sure. And again, that's the beautiful thing about Grey Cup is you just because two teams come in, totally different records, totally different environment, what have you. I mean, you just never know. But my God, like I can't help but think about that fact that missed field goal, that rouge, that game-winning rouge, essentially is what it was for the Argos. Man, things could like.
And it's funny. It's gotten them talking. Supposedly, it's on the agenda. We'll see what happens. We'll see if a game cannot end on a rouge anymore. It'll be interesting.
I mean, the fact, and again, how many of our American friends sat and marveled at the fact, like, so a team won their division essentially on a missed field goal. What the actual F? Like, and all you can do is just shrug your shoulders and say, well, that's the Canadian Football League for you. Yeah. I mean, it's so weird, especially compounded by the fact that the entire Eastern Division this year really had their trials and tribulations. Just the fact that they somehow managed to end up winning the Grey Cup is baffling beyond comprehension.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about it earlier in the season too, like before, like on like preview shows and things like that. We talked about like, don't be surprised, folks. Like I got a feeling that I had said, like, don't be surprised if all four teams in the East end up being in the conversation for making the playoffs. I think that it would be a lot more improved, and well, that missed.
No, but teams were in the conversation almost up until the last week of the season.
Well, yes, I mean, like as far as competing and for the opportunity to go into the Grey Cup playoffs, absolutely they were. But I mean, Toronto was not spectacular, but they were consistent and ended up pretty much being the only team with a winning record in the East. Montreal, as we've well documented, started out very slow, but then got their act together and ended up at even Steven record wise. But even Hamilton, like all of a sudden, a lot of people like they came on fire in that last month of the season, and they looked like they could, like once they got their stuff figured out, they looked like they could have been a threat too. Like, I mean, I was actually thinking like, okay, like I can see why a lot of people were actually picking Hamilton over Montreal in the Eastern semifinal, mostly because of history, I'm sure, but just the fact that they really did look like the hottest team in the CFL in that last month of the season. But Montreal, obviously, they knew that they had something special here, and they were not going to, like their first home playoff game in 8 years. they were not going to disappoint the fans. They were not going to let the 20,000 plus down. And how about that, Tim? How about the fact that Montreal was able to finally get back to almost selling out football games? Not entirely selling out, but coming damn close to selling out at least on 2 or 3 occasions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's there are a lot of takeaways from this season. I mean, what do you fans think? I mean, what was your most favorite moment, fan? Let us know on socials. It's so hard. I mean, for me, really, Cliff, I mean, if my one takeaway with all the stuff that happened this year, I think really for me what's going to stand out, it's funny. It's because I've never really done something like this. I think it would be our 3-day excursion to training camp. And I think that's, to me, that will linger the most in my mind, at least until we start getting making some new memories for 2023. What about you? What's your one thing that you're going to remember the most about the 2023 season? Sorry, 2022 season. I'm getting ahead of myself. Can you tell? I want the schedule as soon as the schedule comes out, it's the 2023 season.
That's true. That would be a great indication that 2023 is on the way, is a new schedule. So, and we will, as tradition has become now, we should get it before the end of 2022, folks. For me, my one standout moment, my gosh, it's so hard. I mean, like, I know there's so many moments that you can look back on and say, I can't believe that happened. And yeah, yes, training camp without question was definitely eye-opening. I think it allowed us to do stuff that we weren't able to do before. And even though it wasn't the way we had anticipated or planned or hoped it would go, as you said, it still ended up being extremely memorable. I mean, that without question, definitely a highlight. For me, it was just getting to know certain players on a level like we haven't had before, whether it was through the podcast or just interacting with them post game. I mean, to me, that was exciting more than anything else, was just being able to have that opportunity to get to know these guys and just see their progression week after week after week.
Yeah. 10. And by the way, 10 coaches, players, people involved with the Alouettes were with us this past season. 10. We interviewed 10.
Yeah. And again, for the first time ever, too, interviewing someone from the ownership group of this franchise. Mm-hmm. I talk about constantly how I would have loved to have had, and I kind of regret not being able to find a way to get the late, great Bob Wettenhall on the podcast to talk.
Agreed.
But having Gary Stern on, and he rose to superstardom as well, thanks to his Twitter account, and just saying what was on his mind, good, bad, or other. And, the fact that we were able to get him onto the show and talk was definitely a very cool experience. I mean, it's great to have players on, don't get me wrong. Having coaches on leads to a whole different perspective on things. General managers definitely offer insight that you don't necessarily get, but to have like someone as part of the ownership group, like now the minority owner of the Montreal Alouettes, I mean, to have him on, and I had a blast talking with him too. Like
correct. Here, I just got a correction. Still the minority owner.
Yes, you're right. I mean, nothing's changed in that sense.
Right.
Even though
he's not the face. He's not the face.
Yeah, exactly. He's definitely still very much a part of the ownership group.
Yes.
There's let me cast no aspersions otherwise.
Right. Exactly.
But being able to sit and talk with him and get his perspective on things from an ownership side was something we never had on the podcast before, and I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was so cool that we were able to provide the fans and listeners with that perspective. The fact that we were able to do that this year, in addition to all the other stuff, because I mean, that's the one thing we wanted to, I think one thing I will take away is that I think we have pushed the show to another level, Tim. And I'm so excited. Like there's a lot of things we didn't get a chance to do this year for any number of reasons.
No.
To me, that's just a motivating factor to come back next year and just work at that. There's still so many interviews we have to do. There's still so many experiences.
And our historical interviews, the one with Mark Waitman about the U2 game. Go back and listen to that in our archives. Being able to pay it forward thanks to our sponsors, our presenting sponsors, SportBuff, with the flight crew seats.
Exactly. Like so many fans were able to attend an Alouettes game this year.
And we can say, going forward, 2023 and beyond, your 2 newest members of the Football Reporters of Canada will be taking it very seriously, and we will be improving this show for you, the fans, and we will be doing our damnedest to bring you all the Alouettes news and notes and behind-the-scenes stuff that we can, just as we did for our first 7 seasons. Did we ever get an answer from you on what your favorite part was before we finish up?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I struggle with this. I
Choose
really
one thing, Clifford Pine.
Oh, gosh. Okay. My favorite thing would have to be... jeez. It's so hard. What?
Are we really gonna end this episode on a cliffhanger?
No, we're not.
It'll be
No.
Cliff will be going. And my most favorite moment of 2022 was.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah, exactly.
To the Alouettes
Take off to the great wide north. Yeah.
Yeah, no. We're not ending on that note either. So.
No, we're not. No.
All right. Honestly, truly, I mean, it sounds cliche, but I think when it comes to like favorite moment of the season, I think it truly was just being whatever game we were at, like to be there after the game and taking in everything, taking in the entire experience, like just not only as supporters of this team, but also too from a media perspective, like to be able to sit and talk with players and get their insight as well after the game. To me, like that's invaluable. And that's what helped prompt me to want us to become members of the Football Reporters of Canada, because we don't want to be just seen as fans of the Alouettes. We want to be representatives of this team. We want to help bring this team to light. We want to help get people to understand and see where the Alouettes are coming from when they make their moves. We may not understand or appreciate everything that's done. We may not agree with some of the moves that have been made by this organization, but we at least want to try and offer perspective on it. And we want to bring that to you, the listeners, wherever you're listening, whether it's here in Montreal or across Canada or even across the world. We want you to be coming to us for your Alouettes news, for your thoughts, opinions, analysis, anything like that. We want to be a part of that. We want to take things to the next level. And that is our goal in 2023, is to truly take this podcast to the next level. We want to do bigger things. We want to do better things. We want to bring you guys as much content as possible. We want you to say, oh yeah, I get my news, I get my thought, I get everything from the Alouettes Flight Deck. We want Tim and Cliff, we want to hear what their perspective is. We want to know what they think about this move, that move, whatever.
Yeah.
We want to hear it all from these guys. And we want to be that for you folks. We want to be that source. We want to be that place that you come to get your Alouettes news and your thoughts and what have you. We want to be that for you. And that is my goal. And I think that's your goal too, Tim, is to be that for you, the listeners.
Yep, I agree. And I think it's the best way to end our 2022 broadcast season. We appreciate every single one of you who listened to us in 2022, our 7th season. We're looking forward to starting our 8th very, very soon within the new year. Everybody here at the Flight Deck wants to wish everybody a safe and happy holidays. We hope to have you come back to us in 2023 to hear about what we have to say about the Alouettes. So for everybody here at the Alouettes Flight Deck, for Cliffy D, I'm Tim Capper. We're on Final Approach.